Step into the shadows and unlock the secrets of disappearing completely, a tantalizing journey into the realm of vanishing where identities fade and new beginnings emerge. You've probably heard it said a couple of times that the world is a small village, and that's thanks to the digital footprints and interconnected networks that govern our daily lives. As a result, you might think that it's completely impossible to disappear from your current life. However, if you're truly looking to start anew or maintain your privacy, vanishing without a trace might be difficult, but not completely impossible. And in this video, we'll show you how. There are generally two ways you can go about this. You could do it slowly over a period of time, or just up and leave. But whichever way you decide to completely disappear, you would need some sort of plan. You're trying to change your life here. You need to give some thought to how you will survive in a completely new place with absolutely no ties to anything and anyone. Speaking of ties, one of the first and probably most difficult things you would have to do if you plan on disappearing is to cut ties with everyone close to you. If there's nobody that would be worried by your disappearance, you're good. But if there are, you might need to slowly cut off ties with them. Stop taking their calls, stop allowing them in your house, and stop going to see them. The idea here is that you want to make sure that when you disappear, nobody notices enough to report you as a missing person. Alternatively, you could just up and leave. But especially if you have loved ones that care about you, you would have to change locations regularly for a period of time to make sure that you're not spotted. You might need to do this in your first year or two of disappearance, depending on how dogged you think your family and friends are. Before you set off, though, you need to make sure that your financial situation is secure. First off, make sure to pay all your outstanding debts if possible. You don't want to leave behind any situation that would make people interested in looking for you. However, if that's not possible, you want to close all your existing bank accounts and credit cards, liquidate your assets, including property or investments, and convert them into cash or other untraceable forms of currency. Also, avoid using personal checks or online transactions that can be traced back to you. We know that digital and card payments have made life easier for everyone. But for someone who's trying to shed their old lives, digital and card payments are your worst enemy. Crypto could be an idea in this situation if you're not worried about it, but that's more of a long-term thing. And that's because you need to open new bank accounts to convert your crypto to fiat currency, and that would require a new identity. So even if you hold some of your money in crypto, make sure you hold a lot of cash to tide you over till you settle into a new identity. Speaking of which, creating a new identity is a crucial step in disappearing, and you want to try as much as possible to stay within legal boundaries. Remember that you're trying to avoid situations that would make people want to look for you. Doing something illegal means that the government would be looking for you, so do what you can to avoid illegal documentation. The key to changing your identification, though, is research, because the process differs depending on where you live and why you are trying to disappear. But generally, changing your name isn't difficult. Changing your social security number is a bit more difficult, though, because you need a legitimate reason, typically identity fraud or domestic violence, to change it. That said, if you can afford to, consider consulting a legal professional. Of course, you don't want to consider your family lawyer or any lawyer that has a relationship with someone else in your life that you're trying to leave behind. Anyway, an attorney that specializes in identity-related matters can guide you through the legal requirements and provide advice on the safest and most ethical approaches. So if you can afford to, that would be the best way to go. If you can't, you would have to do everything on your own. This requires a lot of research on the specific requirements for where you live. Make sure to download a VPN for this, though. You don't want anyone knowing what you've been up to, and incognito mode doesn't work as well as you want it to. Speaking of which, minimizing your digital footprint is essential in this age of technological surveillance. Start by deleting or deactivating all your social media accounts, removing personal information, and ensuring no connections are left behind. This way, no one in your new life would be able to trace you to your old life. Alternatively, you could consider leaving everything as it is and just stop posting new stuff. This way, it would seem to people that your disappearance was intentional and not an accident, which might reduce their need to find you. You would have to decide which works for you. If at this point you haven't closed your bank accounts and cards, you have to at least stop all your online purchases. Whatever you buy from this point on has to be paid for in cash. Furthermore, use software to erase your browsing history and secure your online presence. That said, to be completely honest, it's kind of impossible to completely remove your digital footprints. The internet is forever after all, but you can delete a lot of your footprints and stop creating new ones. And if you are nobody of interest, that should be enough. At this point, you've got all the preliminaries covered. As we mentioned earlier, you could decide to meticulously plan all of that or just up and go. But whichever way you decide to disappear, you would have to do all of those things. Finding a new place is the same way. You could decide to just go wherever, or you could be meticulous in choosing where you want to build your new life. If you are choosing the meticulous route, you want to consider factors like local culture, language barriers, cost of living, and accessibility to basic necessities. You also want to decide whether you want to move to a city or a small town. Both of them have merits and demerits. It's easy to get lost in a big city, but you would always have to be wary of surveillance cameras. That might not be much of a concern in a small town, but everyone usually knows everybody, so a new person would stick out big time. Wherever you go, though, make sure to research the area. You want a place where it's easy to get accommodation and employment without having much of a history. If most of the jobs and accommodations on offer would require references or something else that could link you to your past, you know that's not the place for you. You have to be cautious about revealing personal information or sharing your true identity with anyone you meet. Now, you can decide to move once and be done with it. In that case, make sure it's as far away from where you used to stay as possible. And also make sure it's a place that nobody from your old life would consider looking for you. However, if you're willing to be more meticulous, you could decide to move locations a couple of times before finally settling, just to keep people off your scent. But of course, if you're sure that no one would be looking for you, it's best to get settled into your new life as quickly as possible. To maintain your newfound invisibility, you would have to embrace changes in your lifestyle and habits. You want to change your hair color, change your dressing style, even change your weight if you can. The plan is to look as different from what you used to look like as possible. So if you have tattoos, you could get cover-ups, remove the tattoos, or stick with wearing clothes that cover them. You also need to adopt different routines, interests, and social circles. At this point, I have to mention that you don't need to completely change everything, but you need to change enough of your public persona that you would be unrecognizable to someone who knows you. Doing the exact opposite is not a good idea, though. Why would someone that likes everything you hate and hates everything you like exist? Make adjacent changes, plus making opposite changes and keeping some things the same should create a new enough persona. I don't know if this needs to be said, but you need to resist the temptation to contact family, friends, or acquaintances who may inadvertently reveal your whereabouts. You might be tempted to let that one person know what you're up to, or maybe even leaving a card that says, "Don't look for me," but that could make them look for you. So if you're going to disappear, forget about contacting anyone from your old life. Something else you want to avoid is the temptation to stalk people from your old life. People have mistakenly liked people's pictures and videos before, and that's what you don't want. Also, why keep longing for what you can't have? All of that said, you should know that disappearing is an ongoing process. It requires constant vigilance. You would have to stay alert to potential risk and vulnerabilities. Regularly check for any information that might inadvertently expose your identity. Be cautious of public records, government agencies, and surveillance systems that may unknowingly link you to your past. Yep, this is your life now. But as I've mentioned a million times in this video, provided you are not wanted by the government, you should be good. Disappearing completely in a world where everyone is connected is a complex undertaking. It demands careful planning, adaptability, and resourcefulness. But by following the steps outlined in this video, you can increase your chances of disappearing without leaving a trace. I feel like I need to mention that disappearing entirely is not a decision to be taken lightly, and it's crucial to consider the ethical implications, legal consequences, and emotional torture that may arise. So, proceed with caution and make sure to always prioritize your safety. Thanks for watching. If you like stories like these, make sure you click the subscribe button before it disappears. See you in the next one.